It will be Rosenstein's boss, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who is set to testify this afternoon in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. From FBN co-host of After the Bell, Melissa Francis, Fox News legal analyst and host of Justice with Judge Janine. Judge Janine Pirro is here. And today's #OneLuckyGuy, Fox News contributor and nationally syndicated radio talk show host, sitting right next to Judge Janine, Richard Fowler, and he is outnumbered. I don't know what I meant by that. Yeah, what did you mean by that? You never know.
Yeah, well, we'll see by the end of it, right?
All right. So much going on. Let's begin. Attorney General Jeff Sessions will be the highest-ranking government official to testify in the Russia probe so far when he appears before the Senate Intelligence Committee at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. His testimony coming after fired FBI Director James Comey dropped hints during his testimony last week that there may be more to Sessions' recusal from the Russia probe. And while Sessions will be testifying before his former colleagues, he may not get a warm welcome from all. One of his questioners, Democratic Senator Jack Reed, on what we may expect.
So I think important to establish why he was involved in the dismissal of Director Comey, since he had recused himself from apparently all matters related to the Russia investigation, and the president himself has indicated that he indeed based his dismissal of Comey on the Russian investigation. So the Attorney General's involvement is highly questionable, to be blunt, and I think those questions will be raised.
Meantime, as we await the Sessions hearing, special attention will be paid on whether he does indeed cite executive privilege, especially when it comes to private conversations the Attorney General has had with the President. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us live from Capitol Hill with the latest. Catherine.
Thank you, Sandra. Based on the testimony this morning from the Deputy Attorney General and the line of questioning from Democrats, we got a pretty good idea where they'll be heading this afternoon.
I do have questions for the Attorney General. I want to know why he has provided false testimony to me and to Senator Franken. I want to know why, if he is recused from the Russia investigation, he played any role in the dismissal of FBI Director Comey.
The fired FBI Director James Comey testified last week that by mid-February, when he talked with President Trump about former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, he already had a sense, based on either evidence or intelligence, that his boss, the Attorney General, would recuse himself from the Russia case. Here's that exchange.
When it comes from the President, I took it as a direction to get rid of this investigation because we're not going to follow that request. And so we decided we got to keep it away from our troops. But is there anybody else we ought to tell at the Justice Department? And as I laid out in my statement, we considered whether to tell the Attorney General, decided that didn't make sense because we believed, rightly, that he was shortly going to recuse.
The FBI director also testified that he believed he was fired over his handling of the Russia probe, and then he questioned what role the Attorney General played in his firing because the Attorney General had taken himself out of all matters Russia.
I think it's a reasonable question. If, as the President said, I was fired because of the Russia investigation, why was the Attorney General involved in that chain? I don't know. And so I don't have an answer for the question.
Supporters of the Attorney General point to the fact that he will be testifying in an open session this afternoon. It will be his chance to set the record straight based on the fired FBI director's testimony, Sandra.
Catherine Herridge, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Richard Fowler's on the couch with us. See, he's cracking up because I kind of set you two up. But, Judge, obviously, we want to get your take on executive privilege. Sean Spicer not ruling out that Jeff Sessions might just not answer some questions and cite executive privilege. But, Richard, to you first on what your expectations are this afternoon.
So, Judge Napolitano earlier on the channel talked about the fact that Jeff Sessions is not sort of here as the AG. He's here as a witness in this Russia investigation. And I think that's where the line of question from Democrats are going to go. Were you involved? Donald Trump has said in the Lester Holt interview that he indeed fired James Comey because of Russia, and Russia was part of it. So were you involved in that firing, and how involved were you? I think that's going to be the line of questioning coming from Democrats.
Judge?
I don't think that Jeff Sessions is testifying just to talk about Russia, just like Rod Rosenstein wasn't there just to talk about the budget. I mean, anything is really subject to questioning.
Agreed.
All right, you know where the Democrats are going. The Democrats are going to try to make this man look like a liar. Here's the problem. He is experienced in Congress, in testimony as a prosecutor. This is a guy who understands the ways of congressional hearings, and he is a very ethical guy who took himself out of this whole Russia thing when, honestly, I don't think he had to. If you look at Eric Holder, did he take himself out of anything? No. But Sessions is such an ethical, honest guy that he made the decision, you know what, let me get out of this so that no one can be concerned. I was working with the president to get elected, and someone might see the appearance of impropriety.
But talk to legality first of that. Can he invoke executive privilege?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeff Sessions can invoke executive privilege for a number of reasons. If national security is an issue, or if there are public discussions with the president that shouldn't be subject to the public domain, or if the information is classified, this is totally legitimate. Now, then, however, there may be litigation if someone, questioning says, you know what, I don't really buy that. I want the answer to this, and I could see that happen.
Well, I guess the issue is, having seen Lois Lerner make her grand statements when she was testifying on the Hill, and then invoke the Fifth. I think that's what the public, and certainly some of these lawmakers and these senators who know Jeff Sessions best, that's what people don't want to see. I don't appreciate it when someone cherry picks and decides when they want to dive into the bunker of salvation to save themselves from some intense grilling. However, I'm not a huge Jeff Sessions fan. I've got a number of reasons why I question his ability to be the Attorney General in this country, but they don't necessarily have to do with this case. I want him to answer some of the questions about what the president has said publicly.
Well, you know, you may want him to answer questions, but here's the truth.
About what the president said publicly to Lester Holt.
There are legal guidelines. It's not about what we want to hear. It's like Jim Comey saying, well, I really can't talk about this, or I really can't talk about that. I'm glad you want to hear it. You don't want him jumping into a bunker, but this is a man who understands the law. He understands his role as Attorney General, and he understands how far he can go or should go.
Let's go back to the original question, though, and the premise when Leahy's saying he doesn't think he should be involved because he recused himself over Russia and Comey was fired over Russia. I mean, can we start a list of the reasons why Comey deserved to be fired? Everybody had been calling for his firing for so long. I mean, he's the chatty, Cathiest FBI director of all time. I mean, he equally offended parties on all sides. His most recent testimony, he talked about doing things that were wildly questionable at the very least. So to say that it's over Russia.
To your point, very, very quickly, and this speaks to exactly what you're saying. What if the president didn't share that he was firing James Comey over Russia? What if he really went to Rod Rosenstein and said, okay, why don't you put out a complete graphic of why James Comey needs to be relieved of
That would take
duty.
a long time.
Well, but maybe, you know, what Rod Rosenstein did was he wrote a pretty thorough memo, gave it to the president, and the president said this was enough. But what if he had internally decided about Russia and didn't share that until he spoke with Lester Holt about it? Is that cause for recusal if Jeff Sessions wasn't privy to?
I think that's why Democrats are asking the question today.
It doesn't matter.
But I agree with you, Judge. I do believe that Jeff Sessions has the ability to invoke executive privilege, right? I'm not a lawyer, but most legal scholars tend to agree with that. My problem is a PR problem, and I think where I agree with Kennedy is that the moment he starts invoking executive privilege, people go, something in this buttermilk doesn't smell right.
That's obviously in your opinion. Okay, so Judge, set this up for us. What is at stake with this testimony, with this hearing today, for the administration, broadly speaking?
Well, I think that what the administration is saying is, look, Jeff Sessions could have said, I want to testify in a closed hearing. He said, no, I want to testify in an open hearing. I want everyone to question me. I have no problem. If I have to, I'll invoke the legal protections that are incumbent upon me to allege. And what he's got to do is try to explain what he did, why he did it. And Kennedy, I agree with what you said. I mean, the truth is, it doesn't matter what the reason is for Jim Comey's being fired, and I'm so sick of talking about it. You know what? Jim Comey, at this point, is a leaker. As far as I'm concerned, he did nothing when there were all kinds of problems with the Obama administration. He's an operative, and right now I have a real problem with Mueller, but I'm sure that's coming.
Okay, now what about, can I just ask
he compromised himself as well.
Yes,
I mean, Comey went out there, he said he felt sick about the idea that he had to, use different language when he was talking about the Clinton investigation because he knew it was incorrect and it was not right, and then he went and did it anyway?
Right.
Mildly nauseous and queasy. Okay, very quickly. Judge, what happens if Jeff Sessions goes before this committee and gives a completely different account of that conversation he had with James Comey before the president wanted to meet with Comey privately? Because the president said Jeff Sessions didn't say anything. He his body language insinuated, and his silence, that he knew it was wrong and he was uncomfortable, but he didn't speak to, why it was okay for the president to meet with Comey privately. Now, what if Jeff Sessions goes before the Senate Intelligence Committee and gives a completely different account?
Like what? What is he going to say? We weren't asked to leave? What is he going to say?
He can say, well, no, I told him that he's going to go in there and get the business end of that arm.
That's such a hypothetical. Here's the bottom line.
Well, it's not. What if there's conflicting testimony? Where do you go from there?
Where you go from there is you continue to ask and you continue to dig. And that's why Sessions had said, put me out there, put me in, coach. I'm ready to answer. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the read you're getting on it. All right, it's going to be a huge day. We are going to be waiting for that testimony from Jeff Sessions. Of course, we will bring that to you, that hearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee, live right here on the Fox News Channel. Our special coverage, helmed by Bill Hemmer and Shannon Bream. It all begins at 2 p.m. Eastern Time today, so keep it right here on Fox News Channel. That all coming down in just a couple hours from now. All right, meantime, we have more of the testimony from the DOJ's #2, Rod Rosenstein. What he is saying about the independence of the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Plus, speaking of Mueller, the new questions about his legal team's impartiality, the sizable political donations some of his new hires have made to Democrats, how big a problem this could be, and the furious reaction. We will debate that next. And after the show, you can join our live chat by clicking the Overtime tab at foxnews.com. For the Senate Appropriations Committee earlier today, and he'll also be meeting with House lawmakers. The hearings supposed to focus on the Justice Department's budget, but Rosenstein being grilled about the Russia investigation. He assured lawmakers that special counsel Robert Mueller is being given full independence. Watch.
You have my assurance that we're going to faithfully follow that regulation, and Director Mueller is going to have the full degree of independence that he needs to conduct that investigation appropriately.
Rosenstein also being asked about reports that President Trump hasn't ruled out firing Mueller. Here's his exchange with Senator Susan Collins.
If President Trump ordered you to fire the special counsel, what would you do?
Well, Senator, I'm not going to follow any orders unless I believe those are lawful and appropriate orders. Under the regulation, Special Counsel Mueller may be fired only for good cause, and I am required to put that cause in writing.
He also testified that he's had no discussions with the president about the special counsel at any point. Kennedy, you were having a strong reaction during that exchange. What was that?
To that exchange, I was actually just wait, no. Yeah. Here's what it is. I'm just curious to see what the balance will be between. I'm watching Rod Rosenstein's testimony because I'm very curious about the budget at the Department of Justice. That's the thing as a fiscal conservative that I just want to make sure that they really put the screws to those guys and make sure that they're pinching every penny and counting every dollar. Having said that, I think a little bit of drama sprinkled in. It's like being an astrophysics PhD and every once in a while watching the Kardashians.
There's that.
Also, there are dramatic
I think the way that he handled that question was excellent because you get all these hypotheticals thrown at you in these hearings. Why in the world, as a witness, would you take on a hypothetical? How stupid do you have to be, right? He's like, why would I answer hypotheticals?
Exactly. And when he said that, I said, this guy's an experienced prosecutor. He knows how to answer questions.
Right.
And, all of this craziness, what if? We've been waiting for the connection between the Russians and the president for the last, 10 months?
And still nothing.
We're still, what if? Well, let's focus on something real.
Yeah. What do you expect from this, Richard?
From Sessions?
Yeah, well, that exchange painted the picture of what we're looking at today.
I think that there's no question this paints a picture of what we're looking at. There's going to be this debate about whether or not the White House engaged in some sort of impropriety around the firing of James Comey. Is there an obstruction of justice?
Are you glad he was fired?
I mean, here's the thing. I think the timing on it was bad, right? So if it were me and I were the President of the United States, I'm not, I would have fired him my first day in office. I said, listen, I don't think you're good for the job. You got to go. I think the timing of this is why we're still talking about it, because the White House has created a lot of self-inflicted wounds. From a PR perspective, if I was the President of the United States, no matter what question I'm going to get about Comey or Russia, my answer is going to be like, well, I don't want. There's an active investigation. I want to talk about it, but let's talk about my health care plan and what we're going to do to save the country.
I agree
He
with
has
you.
no pivot. He has no ability to pivot.
I mean, when you go out to any other part of the country and you talk to actual people, and I'm sure so many of our viewers, they're talking about health care and tax cuts and tax reform. I mean, number one, more than any of the rest of this. And while this is all interesting, we don't want, you know, anything nefarious going on in the government. At the same time, these people need to get to work.
That's it, but that's the point. When you see these town halls, especially when Republican House members go to these town halls, there's no one there screaming about Russia.
No.
They're all screaming about health care.
Right. And you know what happened yesterday with the rollout of that apprentice program? The whole idea of saying, look, not everybody needs a college education. Not everyone needs to be in debt for the rest of their lives. You know, let's train people so that they can fulfill the jobs that are out there.
Yeah, because that's obviously
I agree with the judge. I actually agree with the judge. I think I'm a big fan of apprenticeships as part of a career technical education. Sadly, that message is going to get lost today because Jeff Sessions is testifying.
But so then, after today, Judge, does this allow the president to move on with his agenda, having Jeff Sessions sit down and testify?
Let me tell you what's going to happen. Not that I know and not that I'm hypothesizing, but Jeff Sessions is going to come out and be Jeff Sessions. He's a straight shooter. He's smart. He knows the ways of Washington, okay? But the Democrats are going to say he lied. The Republicans are going to say let's move on. And the country's in a mess because the Democrats at this point can't work on behalf of the American people. No, they're going to say no. They are going to say
can I just say this one point? This is the one point I will make. I say the same argument every time. I think Sanders heard me say it, Kennedy has heard me say it, and I will say it again.
You repeat
We are in the House. We are in such a small majority. We can't do anything. All we can do is get on the floor and complain. We can, our votes in the Senate. In the Senate, we have 48 votes. Right? If they want to get health care done, Republicans can get it done without us. We could sit on our hands. We could disappear.
Or you could
and
not
you guys
sit on
can get
our
it
hands
done. You cannot blame Democrats for the fact that the Freedom Caucus and the Tuesday Group cannot work together.
No,
you just cannot.
What I'm saying is that you can predict that they will criticize the Attorney General.
But it doesn't matter.
But why are we having this hearing? Why are we having this discussion?
We're having this hearing.
Democrats are fighting
No, that's not true. We're having this
Richard
hearing.
Fowler, how dare you? That's a cop-out.
We're
look
having this
Look at some
hearing.
of the legislation on criminal justice reform alone that has been bipartisan. And I think if Democrats come up with good solutions and actually work with
let's talk about criminal justice reform. When President Obama was in office, we tried to get criminal justice reform done. Democrats, Republicans working together still couldn't get through the House because of House Republicans. Number one. Number two, the intelligence investigation is a bipartisan one, and I actually think it's a good bipartisan investigation where Richard Burr is concerned about Russia engaging in our elections just as well as Mark Warner.
Get to it. Get
the evidence and get out. But let's be very real.
You do not, as a prosecutor, say this person must have committed a crime. Ergo, I will spend all my resources to identify.
So the Mueller investigation is one about some sort of criminal intent. The Senate investigation is a fact-finding investigation to hopefully dictate how we legislate, making sure that our elections are safe.
Okay, you guys said you're going to get along so beautifully. That didn't happen.
We actually like each other.
To see what happens on the couch. We're not on camera.
In the meantime, Robert Mueller facing new questions about whether he can remain neutral when it comes to spearheading the Russia investigation. This amid multiple reports that at least 3 of 5 new hires on his legal team have donated almost exclusively to top Democrats, including former President Obama and Hillary Clinton. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, who has been highly critical of Mueller's appointments, believes his legal team can't be impartial because of their links to the left. Watch.
I do think the congressional Republicans ought to look into this. Mueller's first 4 hires were all Democrats. One of them had worked for the Clinton Foundation. One of them had, in 2 cases, deliberately hid evidence from the defense, one of which was repudiated by 9-0 by the Supreme Court. These are bad people.
Bad people?
Bad people. I mean, these are people who are going to be after Trump.
So, Judge, that's one side of the story. The other side, you could say, you know, there are always attorneys that go out there and defend criminals who they don't believe in, they don't agree with. That's their job.
I get that.
So you have to be unbiased in the legal profession no matter what you're doing. What do you think about this?
Well, I think being unbiased is one thing. We're not criticizing someone for the clients they've had in the past. But when you bring on a whole team that has made it very clear affirmatively that their money, their hard-earned money, is going to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and let's investigate Trump. I mean, all you need to do is have half a brain to figure out where they're headed. They are looking for a crime. They are, as far as I'm concerned, prejudging him. Why not have people who supported Donald Trump? Why not do 50-50?
So let's have a real conversation. So this is
we're not having one?
No. I'm just going to say this is a Washington thing, right? So a lot of times when people want to work for the Justice Department, they play both sides. They're like, well, let's see, I'm going to give to one so I can get an appointment. Remember, this is a congressional appointment. All of these individuals in this investigation were once DOJ staff, and to get a DOJ staff, you have to be approved by the Senate, appointed by the president. So you play politics. There's probably some out there that have given to George Bush, and maybe you should have picked some of those. But Mueller is above.
But he could have gone 50-50.
I mean,
right.
Both Democrats and Republicans can agree, including Newt Gingrich 2 weeks ago, that Mueller is above reproach. He's the one in charge of this investigation.
He's like this with Jim Comey. Mueller and Comey are buddies.
But remember, the Trump administration
in the assessment of who you're going to believe, whether credibility is at stake, if you're friends with one witness as a judge, I'd throw that person out.
I get it.
That is not something that is ethically proper.
All right, I'm going to jump in because this is to be continued on Outnumbered. Meanwhile, we've got to get to the White House because President Trump inviting senators to meet with him at the White House for lunch today. We're told to discuss health care with those senators. The White House saying Obamacare continues down a death spiral. The president and the vice president meeting with many senators in that room. Let's listen.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Very happy that you're all here today. Republican senators, we're going to be discussing the urgent need to repeal and replace the disaster known as Obamacare. It was just announced yesterday that 2 million people have dropped out of Obamacare, 2 million additional. They're leaving fast. Premiums have increased by an average of more than 100% nationwide. In North Carolina, premiums have gone up 176%. In Arkansas, premiums have gone up 128%. In Pennsylvania, premiums have gone up by 120%. And I hate to say this to you, Lisa, but in Alaska, they've gone up 207% on Obamacare. You know, I used to mention only Arizona because they were up 116% in Arizona. Now Arizona is like good by comparison to some of the numbers, but they're way up in Arizona also. Insurers are fleeing the market. Last week it was announced that one of the largest insurers is pulling out of Ohio, great state of Ohio. That could mean another 20 counties, at least 19,000 people in Ohio will have no plan at all. Nationwide, 1 in 3 U.S. counties have only a single insurer, and many of those insurers, as you know, have announced that they're leaving. Obamacare has been broken, and it's been a broken promise. One after another, Americans were told that if you liked your doctor, you'll keep your doctor. That was a lie. They were told that if you liked your plan, you'd keep your plan. That was a lie. Americans were told the premiums would go down by $2,500 per year, and instead their premiums went up to levels that nobody thought even possible. The House has passed a bill, and now the Senate is working very, very hard, and specifically the folks in this room, and I really appreciate what you're doing, to come out with a bill that's going to be a phenomenal bill for the people of our country. Generous, kind, with heart. That's what I'm saying. And that may be adding additional money into it. We're going to come out with a real bill, not Obamacare. And the results are going to be fantastic, and hopefully it'll be announced at the appropriate time, and everyone's going to be happy. But by contrast, Republicans in Congress, as hard as they're working, you have the Democrats on the other side who truly have become obstructionists. Even their even their new motto, resist. And I guess it's a pretty accurate motto. Every time I see it, I say, that's right. That does represent the Democrats. It's called resist. And it's very unfortunate. And I actually said, if we came up with the greatest health care plan or tax cut, because we're coming out with massive tax cut and tax reform, but if we came up with the greatest health care or tax cut ever in our country's history, we wouldn't get one Democrat vote. It's obstruction. So the Republicans are working hard. We've passed and signed 38 pieces of legislation, which nobody likes to talk about. I think probably seldom has any president and administration done more or had more success so early on, including a record number of resolutions to eliminate job-killing regulations. And we see it all over the country where jobs are starting that would never have started ever under any circumstances. So I'd like to thank our great Vice President for being here. I'd like to thank all of the senators who I have so much respect for. I've gotten to know and love some of them and know and like others. But I have great relationships with every one of them. And I'll tell you what, I do have a lot of respect for the people in this room. I can tell you that very much, and I appreciate you being here. Just a little bit on the economy. Unemployment has fallen to a 16-year low, and manufacturing confidence is at an all-time high. Just came out with a report, the highest level of confidence in the history of the reports, which are, they've been taking these statistics for many, many years, Mike, I'll tell you. And in the history of this report, the confidence level is at the highest point it's ever been. Companies are moving back into the United States. You see it in Michigan where the auto companies are coming back in and they're expanding their existing plants. And they're saying, well, maybe we're just going to have to build in the United States, and that's the way it's going to be. I was also really thrilled last week, and had a lot to do with even their opening ceremony, where in Pennsylvania they're opening a brand new coal mine. That's the first coal mine that's opened in this country in a long time. It's brand new. Many of them are being reopened, but this is a brand new mine. That hasn't happened for many, many years. So we're keeping our promise to the American people. And that's why it's so important for the Senate and the senators that are with us today to come up with a great health care plan. And I really believe they're going to be able to do it. We're very close, and I really believe they're going to be able to do it. So the economy is great. Everything seems to be working really well. And a very big focus for us over the next short period of time are going to be tax cuts, tax reform. We're going to be putting in a very major infrastructure plan. And for this group in particular, we're going to be focused on Obamacare, repeal and replace. I've been talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare now for almost 2 years. Don't forget, on June 16th, June 14th is my birthday, but June 16th was the day I announced that I was running. Some people said, really? That going to happen? And it happened. But it's been exactly, so in 3 days, it's exactly 2 years, Johnny. So we're very happy about that. And from day one, I said, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare, and that's what we're going to do. So we've kept our promises. We've gotten rid of the regulations. The economy is going really well and going to get even a lot better. Numbers for the quarter are going to be very good, I believe. When the numbers are announced, the GDP numbers, I think they're going to be shockingly good based on all of the facts that we're hearing and based on the enthusiasm from the businesses because they're doing well. And we've just started. So I want to thank you all, and I want to thank you, senators, for all being here. We appreciate it. And now what we'll do is we'll start talking about the replacement for Obamacare, which will be far better than Obamacare. Thank you very much.
What's your time frame, Mr. President?
As soon as we can do it. As soon as we can do it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, that's President Trump meeting with senators at the White House over lunch today to discuss the health care in this country, saying health care is a disaster, talking the status of repealing and replacing Obamacare. He said Democrats truly have become obstructionists. By the way, I should point out who was sitting in that room among the senators was Senator John Thune of South Dakota, where premiums from 2013 to 2017 skyrocketed 124%. Also, Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, where premiums are up 120%. And also Senator Mike Lee was sitting in that room, Republican from Utah. Utah has seen its market premiums up over 101%. So they were all taking keen interest in meeting with the president today over lunch at the White House. The president then went on to tout the economy and talk about other things, promising tax cuts, also talking about infrastructure, saying more to come. He said it is important to keep our promises to the American people. President Trump at the White House. Kennedy?
All right, ousted FBI Director James Comey in his testimony last week, of course, admitting to orchestrating a single leak to the New York Times after his firing.
My judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square, and so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
But now a close source says President Trump may formally accuse Comey of a string of other leaks to the New York Times dating back to at least March. And they're set to file complaints with the Justice Department Inspector General and Senate Judiciary Committee. This, as an independent Fox News review of the Times reporting dating back to January, reveals a host of stories sourced to top FBI and Justice Department officials and related sources that either paint Comey in a positive light or push a message he was unable to personally disclose. Comey testified back in May that he'd never been or directed another FBI official to be an anonymous source for news reports about the Trump White House or the Hillary Clinton email investigations. Melissa.
I think that the drive of this is very interesting because the speed and alacrity with which he got that out into the public square, as he said,
that's what he said,
indicates that he had to have done this a zillion times. And when you look at it, when he said, you know, I had to get it out in the public square, I didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons. Like what?
Like the seagulls at the beach.
Yeah.
Look, here's the problem with that whole thing.
As if he was going to walk out a stack of papers to a reporter in his driveway.
Yeah, but when you've got Jim Comey deciding that he's going to leak, think about why he's leaking. He leaked for the purpose of getting a special counsel. Wait a minute. Jim, you were the head of the FBI.
Right.
The president was not under investigation. Now that you're a fired, disgruntled ex-employee, oh my God, we got to get a special counsel out there to investigate the president.
Yeah.
Can't you see through this? He needed to get that information out so that he could go after the president. But when he was the head of the FBI, there wasn't anything worth going after.
Yeah, exactly. What a hero. I want to bring Richard into this because the Fox News report shows that the New York Times had several interesting stories written by the man who wrote the Comey memo story, Michael Schmidt, with Daniel Richman, who is that Columbia law professor, the close friend of James Comey. And it's interesting because the three of them tend to collide in a perfect storm of journalism several times, dating back decades. So is Comey a big fat leaker?
If he is a leaker, then he perjured himself by saying he never leaked. So if that's the case, then that's the case. Like, I mean, there's the facts are the facts, and the facts will sort of rule themselves out. But here's my thought on this, right? So I think, like, I don't think that there is, in my opinion, I disagree with a lot of people in my party, that there is some sort of collusion between Russia and the Trump administration. Might be some loose contacts with no clear collusion. The reason why we're having this conversation, the reason why the special prosecutor is because Donald Trump, whether he likes it or not, could have possibly engaged in either an obstruction of justice or there could have been some perjury. There's something there, or his own appointee wouldn't have appointed a special prosecutor.
You just pushed Judge Jeanine's buttons.
You really did. There's something there. Look.
That's what we're investigating.
Yeah, but what do we, you know what? Maybe we'll waste the next 4 years saying there's something there. I can feel it in my bones. I got it in my gut. Look, James Comey allowed the New York Times story saying that there were conversations between Russian intelligence and the Trump team. He allowed that to sit from February. And then now he says he wants to be transparent and he's coming before Congress. This guy is promoting a narrative that is
you have to admit that you cannot say that this White House is blameless here. Mike Flynn should have never worked at this White House.
That's why he got fired.
That's why he was out.
He shouldn't have been hired.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Didn't Obama give him clearance? Well, let's not even go there. I want to go forward. I don't want to go backwards.
Well, the only reason Obama
didn't you work in the Obama White House?
Yeah,
he worked in the Obama White House and he was fired.
Weird.
And clearance is usually a courtesy given to people, to generals.
Yeah. Do you have clearance?
No, because I'm not a general.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Well, what's your clearance, Clarence?
This is fun, by the way. I'm having a good time.
Court of Appeals dealing another legal blow to President Trump's travel ban. Now the Second Federal Appeals Court to rule against it. So are these decisions putting us in harm's way? We will discuss. That is happening next.
President Trump taking aim at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals after it ruled not to reinstate his travel ban of 6 mostly Muslim nations. The court citing one of the president's tweets to support its decision. But still, he is firing back on social media, writing, well, as predicted, the Ninth Circuit did it again, ruled against the travel ban at such a dangerous time in the history of our country. Supreme Court. Ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Democrat Dianne Feinstein, praising the decision, releasing this statement, quote, the ban won't make any of us safer and fuels anti-American sentiment around the world by sending a message that the United States is taking punitive action against one religion. While presidents have broad authority over immigration, the Ninth Circuit rightly noted that power is not absolute, and President Trump far exceeded it. That ruling comes after the Fourth Circuit also blocked the travel ban last month, a decision the White House is appealing to the Supreme Court. Kennedy, I'm going to go to you first because these two are going to start fighting it.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Yes. You know, I'm actually really excited. I'm gonna keep it brief.
Go.
Brevity is the soul of wit.
Give me your take.
Dianne Feinstein is all over the place. You know, yesterday she wants to investigate Loretta Lynch, and today she's saying that the president overstepped his bounds. The one thing I do agree that it doesn't necessarily, I think the travel ban gives us a false sense of safety. However, I don't think we should not make immigration policy for fear of appeasing terrorists. You know, it's like, oh, they're going to be mad at us, therefore we shouldn't do it. I don't think that's a good reason to have any sort of policy in this country, but I do think we need to have discussion about immigration and how we can make it safer for us, and some of the safe holds and methods we can use, and maybe modernize things and make them less bureaucratic, and perhaps privatize aspects of this overwrought bureaucracy.
Oh, wait, before I hand it over to you two, being the legal mind, the brilliant legal mind that you are, Judge, does the president tweeting about this? Does this, first of all, is it even affecting the situation, and is it negatively?
The court made it clear that they were looking at the president's tweets.
Yeah.
Now,
and campaign rhetoric.
And campaign, yeah, going back. But here's the problem. Any document, any contract is to be assessed, including the executive order, within the 4 corners of that document. You never go outside of the document to say, this is really what he was thinking, not what's in the document. You look at the document. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
So the tweets shouldn't apply, but they are.
Right, exactly. The order is based upon the document itself.
So that, I think, is what is so educational about this whole process to so many people out there who are watching. I think a lot of us thought it was supposed to be based just on the document. Well, when you read the writing of their ruling, I mean, that's just maybe one side's interpretation of how the law is meant to be applied.
They are being political. This is fundamental contract law. This is, 101. You do not go outside the 4 corners of any contract document or any agreement.
Okay. Sorry. Very quickly before we hand it over to Richard Fowler.
Yes.
You can also, I think it's fair to look at unintended consequences that follow from what's within the 4 corners. But I agree with you. Going outside and trying to infer intent is, I think it's very problematic, and no one on either side of the political aisle wants that.
Well, I think the intent is clear here. It is a travel ban. The reason he calls it a travel ban, I don't understand how else you would define it. At the beginning of this whole, first of all, can I just say...
Wait, but what's wrong with that? I mean, if you're saying that it's a travel ban from countries where the governments have fallen apart, so we can't verify people.
Well, that is one thing, but what we've seen from his language is the reason this ban was created was to ban a group of people, and that's discriminatory. And that's what these courts' rulings are saying.
From countries where their governments have fallen apart. If it was about Muslims, it would include Saudi Arabia. I mean, it would include a lot of other places.
Pakistan, India.
But you are penalizing 180 million people.
Wait a minute,
for
they don't
5 or 6 bad actions.
Wait a minute, get some fundamentals here. They have
even 100 bad
right
actors,
to come here. They are guests. They do not have a right to be in this country. So let's stop with more insulting them.
Let's talk about how we got here. We got here because there were Americans, people who had a green card holders who were held up at the airport.
And they changed that. They changed that.
But this was initially a Muslim travel ban, and that's what the intent of it was.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We're going to agree to disagree. With health care and tax reform among the big issues looming